Hello everybody, I am obviously today without makeup and just chilling in my office because today we're going to be working on my HAWKS wig. So yeah, I'm actually making progress on HAWKS. His wig is done, I've done the makeup test for him, and I will probably at some point film a video of me actually getting into the makeup and teach you guys how to do it, but for now I have a work log that I'm working on right now, which is the wig. I'm obviously filming this after I've finished it, but yeah, I'm just sort of introducing you guys to what the concept of the video is going to be. This is not strictly a tutorial. I will talk you through all of the steps of how I do it, but if you want like better wig tutorials, you're probably better going to stuff like the Arda website or the Arda YouTube and stuff like that. That's where I got this wig from. So yeah, if you're looking for a really in-depth tutorial on specific stuff, this is not the place to see it. This is just specific to making a HAWKS wig. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. The materials you will need for this wig are obviously your base wig. My base wig was the Ken classic style Arda wig. It was in, I think, pale blonde? I want to say pale blonde. And that is a yellowy blonde, so if you want a more natural one, I would probably choose one of the more natural blonde shades, but I like looking cartoony, so we went for the yellowy colour. That wig I chose because it has a lace front and a lot of hair to work with, while not being a long wig that's going to be too intimidating to cut up. Also, you want to get a shorter wig ideally because they tend to have a lot more wefts in them, meaning that there's more hair to work with, because since we're curling the wig up and styling it up, we're going to need as much hair as we can physically have. That's also why I chose Arda wigs, because they tend to be really thick and have a lot of different layers and stuff, so that you can basically style a wig pretty much upwards and it won't make a huge deal. The lace front thing is important because all of the hair that he has is mostly off his face, and if you have a lace front you can glue down the lace, and also the individual hairs you can sometimes thread in more if you want, or take out less. I didn't choose to do that because I didn't feel like I needed to, but if they have a particular hairline, it's good to have a lace front. This is one of the styles where I would probably recommend getting a lace front. I wouldn't really go for a non-lace front wig unless you're quite experienced with wig styling, because they can be a lot more difficult to achieve off the face styles. Then I would get a tangle teaser. I don't have a branded tangle teaser, but they're all pretty much the same. Tangle teasers look like this. They are like a big wide paddled brush with wide little spikes, and all of these are quite wide apart as well. They do really well for getting into a wig without pulling all of the hair out and the wefts out, and they're very good for detangling, particularly like really tangled wigs. Always invest in one of these if you're going to start doing wig styling, or even wearing wigs in general. We move on to curlers. I have some little cheap round ones. It's very bright in my office today, in case it wasn't immediately obvious. It's very early. So they can do this, and the idea is that you wrap the hair around it and then snap that closed, and then done, and that will hold the hair in place. Easy peasy. I needed a bazillion of these, honestly, literally thousands. I bought a pack of, I think, I want to say 60 or 40, and I used all of them. So just buy a really big pack of them. You could also use bigger ones, but I recommend using the smaller ones because you want the curl to hold for longer, and you'll get like a smaller curl and then you can finger brush it out. It just looks better to me, but if you've got bigger curlers you can use those too. You also can use heat to curl these wigs. Arda are very strong fibres and they're heat resistant, but heat resistant to a point. I would use a low temperature straightener if you can, and obviously since you want a tight curl, smaller ones like these. They're what I used to straighten my hair, and they're also what I used on this wig. They do not reach a particularly high temperature, so they were perfectly good to use on this. I only used them very occasionally just to reinforce a curl that had already gone in from the curlers. But if you do want to skip the curler stage, you could do that, but make sure the heat tools that you're using are very low temperature, because I really wouldn't want to melt the fibres and then you have to buy a completely new wig. Scissors. Scissor wise, I have 2 pairs of scissors that I used for this. Normal scissors. Those are just normal hairdressing scissors. They're very small, they've got a fine point, and they're very easy to cut into the wig with. I'll get into the details of how you cut the wig while I'm actually doing the video, but these are the materials that you need. I also use thinning scissors. Now if you can see just there, one side of thinning scissors have these little dents in, and the hair slides into those sections and doesn't get cut, so it only cuts some layers of the hair. This is really good for thinning down wigs, so if you've got a really, really thick base at the end of the wig, or you want to thin out the ends of the wig so they look more natural, these are really good. These are not 100% necessary, but they're very helpful. You then want a spray bottle with warm water in it. I don't have mine, but this is just basically for when you're wetting the wig. You desperately do need this, don't just wet it under the tap. You will need to actually spray it while you work because it just will keep drying out. It just will. So you can use any spray bottle at all and just some warm water, but don't skip this step. The curl will not hold if it's wet, if it's not wet. You then need a cheap hairspray. I have this one. And I specifically say a cheap hairspray because you want one that will brush out of the wig. It is literally just for holding it briefly. It needs to be able to brush out. Do not use a strong strength hairspray when I tell you to use the cheap hairspray. Just get a very, very, very cheap one. You can also use this to set stuff like makeup and stuff if you don't have a setting spray. Then, expensive hairspray. This is quite expensive for a hairspray, but they last a long time, so it's literally the only hairspray I would recommend for you styling wigs. I have tried thousands of different hairsprays and this is the only one I recommend. So yeah, this is got to be glued. It has this like little, almost like foghorn funnel at the top. Then I used gel for styling the tips of the wig. I just used the companion to that, the got to be glued gel. But yeah, this stuff's really good too. This is for holding the ends of spikes and for like smoothing out the ends of wigs. Do not use it for actually styling the wig. You'll also need a hairdryer. The hairdryer is to set the hairspray, and it's also an important part of when we're actually curling the wig. And also I recommend, if you can, but these are optional, just get a comb with one of these little points at the end. This is just good for separating wig fibres, and also this comb is good for when you're holding the hair and then you like cut up into it. But yeah, these are all of the materials that I'm using for styling this wig. I do also recommend, for any wig styling at all, getting a wig head. You don't have to, you could style it on somebody else's head. Don't try and do it on your own. It's very, very, very difficult, especially for a wig like this where you're trying to put curlers in it. I really recommend either buying a polystyrene wig head or just putting it on a friend or a parent or something like that so you can style it. But I also recommend these little pins. They don't have to have hearts on top obviously, but any like big top, because these are really good so you don't lose them in the wig and stab yourself later. But also they hold the wig to the polystyrene head. Any little clips as well you can use to hold parts of the wig in place are also very helpful. Particularly for this wig, because there are parts of it that are like swept back or held in specific positions for long times. Clips are helpful for helping hold those bits in place. So that's all the materials, and without further ado I will get back to past Jared, who will talk you through actually styling the wig. So yeah, let's go.
Okay, first of all what you're going to want to do is brush the wig out, and then you're just going to take your spray bottle and wet the entirety of the hair. So all of the hair needs to be wet at this start point. Then we're going to take the thin comb and we're going to brush out into strands each piece of the wig, just like a little bit thinner than your curler, and roll the curler in from the very bottom of the hair up to the root, and then clasp it shut. I'm also choosing to pin some of the rollers in place if they look like they're going to fall out a little bit or like not hold the curl as well as possible. This is totally optional, but I have also already pinned the wig down to the polystyrene head. Make sure that the hair is brushed out and flat as possible when you're getting it on the roller. You do not want it to be tangled or twisted up, because then it will not hold a very defined curl. It will just kind of look like a twisty mess. As you're putting each strand into the curler as well, I would recommend brushing it and then wetting it again. So spray it again and then in goes the roller. As you can see, this section took a very long time. I believe I spent about an hour putting all of the curlers in. I am choosing to roll on top of the hair, so I get the strand of hair, put the curler in, and then roll it upwards towards the root. The reason I'm choosing to do this is because it sends the curl upwards rather than downwards, and gives the hair like more of the whole gravity defying look that HAWKS has. Once your head is completely covered in curlers, I would blast the entire thing with hairspray, and that's the cheap hairspray, and then I would blast the entire thing with your hairdryer on a low heat, just making sure that you're getting every single curler hit with that hairdryer. And then I left my entire thing for 24 hours. After waiting for 24 hours, I will go in and I'll remove every single curler. I would really carefully do this. You wouldn't want to mess up your curls when you've already worked so hard to make sure that they're all in nicely. So just unclip them and very gently roll back down and release the curler. If the curl falls out a little bit, that's fine. You can just add it back in later with your straightener or heat tool. But the most important part is leaving it that 24 hours and making sure everything is bone dry before you actually go in again with removing the curlers. If it's not dry yet, don't remove the curlers, just leave it. The first thing I do then is I separate the fringe from the rest of the hair, as well as the sideburns from the rest of the hair. These are just the side sections that will go in front of your ears, as well as the bangs, which are the front middle fringe area. HAWKS has quite defined 4 little prongs that go up and back towards the back of his head from his fringe. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 4 strands of the fringe, bundling them up into little curls, and pinning them all separate from each other together at the front. I am brushing these out a little bit with the tangle teaser, not too much because I don't want to lose the wave of them, but I don't want them to be as curly as the base part of the wig. So just brushing them out just a little bit and pinning them in their little curl shape at the front. As you can see, they look like tiny little buns. These will be styled into the wig last, because I want to get the basic outline of the other rest of the hair before I start adding those top layers on top of the hair. Then we'll start probably the most complicated part of the wig styling. What I'm going to be doing at this point is the cutting and sort of getting the basic shape. First thing I cut is I make sure I cut down these sideburn bits a little bit. They are going to need to frame my face, so I would go back and forth between trying this on your head and styling it on the wig head. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of slowly smoothing these side parts back into the base back of the hair, because he has these front bits of his hair just swept back. This will also make room for the headphones that he's wearing. So we're just sort of slowly sweeping those back. We're using clips and pins to hold them in place, but we are still using our cheaper hairspray, because we want to still be able to brush through it. We've also started straightening out these front prongs, and we're just holding those in place with the clip. So we just take our tangle teaser, brush them out. They've still got that beautiful wave in them, and we're going to clip them in place. See? I start, styling wise, with my scissors cutting just upwards into the hair. I take about an inch off of all of the bottom part, so the sideburns, the bottom part of the wig completely, I take about an inch off at first. I try it on, and then I work up in like centimetre to half centimetre intervals, trying it on intermittently. Now my scissor technique for cutting is I take the strand of hair that I'm working with in a brush, and then I cut upwards into the hair a kind of diagonal angle, so just facing very slightly to a diagonal, I cut into the hair. I never cut straight across because that will give you too blunt a cut and it will just look completely unnatural. It will look like a very cheap wig. So yeah, diagonal is the way to go, and I do lots of little cuts up into it rather than one big cut. And every single curl in the hair I cut off, I must have cut about an inch off of all of them. But again, it's just going by eye, cutting as you go and trying it on and making sure that you're not going too short so that you're not showing the wefts underneath the wig. The cutting process is definitely trial and error. The whole time I am sweeping the curls up and I am trying to make sure that they are still fluffy and going outwards and just looking as big and messy and bedheady as possible. If a curl looks like it's starting to fall out, I will then go in with a little bit of the heat tool. So I will take my straightener, wrap it around my straightener and then twist it out. I am also starting at this point to shape the sideburn. Again, all still with the cheap hairspray. I am picking out what section of the hair is going to be this bit that goes in front of my ear, cutting that down so that it will sit just above my jawline, and I'm thinning that out quite a lot. With the thinning scissors, all you do is put them across the hair and then clip them one by one over and over and over as you go down the hair. That will just thin out some of the layers of the hair, and for stuff like sideburns, you don't want them to be really big and thick and chunky because they will look kind of comical. You want them to be thin and natural and look like they are naturally growing into the face. I wouldn't make these too blocky either. I would still be cutting up into them to make them again fade as naturally as possible. I also shaped the hair around the ear so that the curve of the ear, it's easy to see where it's supposed to go and the hair doesn't like cover up your ears. The back hairline is actually an area of wigs which is really underappreciated. A lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to this bit because they don't see it as easily on a costume, but it is also quite an important part of making the wig look more natural. I would just make sure that you're using your thinning scissors intermittently if you have them, or cutting very, very lightly into the base of the wig, just to make sure that that hairline sits where your hair would be at that length. Sometimes it can look kind of big and thick down there and it kind of doesn't look as natural as it could. So just pay particular attention to that base part of the wig where it's going to sit at the bottom of your scalp. Once you've got the rest of the hair to look how you're kind of wanting it to look, just following the natural curves and natural curls, twisting your fingers into the wig, making sure it's fluffy and big, I would start with spraying your got-to-be hairspray over those curls. Once you start to see the curls looking how you want them to look and they look nice on your head, start hitting them with the got-to-be. Make sure that those are going to actually stay in place, especially if you've found a bit that looks really, really cool or you've got the sideburns to look exactly how you want them. Get the hairspray, cover that entire area that you like with the got-to-be hairspray, and leave the areas that you're not really completely happy with as the cheaper hairspray, because again, we want to keep working on them. It's trial and error, keep going. Then I'm going to take my front prongs that we've separated, those little bangs, and I'm going to take the clip out, hold them upwards, spray some got-to-be on there, right at the root, and then I'm going to blast that with hairspray. This will help the got-to-be to set, and it will mean that the hair will stay straight up, and then you can sweep that hair back, blast it with the got-to-be hairspray again, and then fine-tune how you want that wave to sit on the head. Again, it's a bit of trial and error, just sort of making sure that you think it looks natural or it looks mostly just as accurate as you can to the references that you're using. I would just be looking back and forth between pictures of Hawks and the wig and getting those to sit kind of how his hair usually sits. Obviously his hair moves around a little bit, but just following what's going to look nice on you can also help. Get all of those bangs pushed back on the head, and you're welcome to, at this point, maybe if you want to leave one hanging down you can. I chose to do that, or you can have one that sticks up a little bit more than others. I've chosen both of those. I have one of the prongs sitting a little bit higher up and one of them hanging a little bit more down into my face. That's just how I think it looks cute, but you are welcome to just follow exactly how the image is of Hawks, so all 4 of them sitting back on his head. At this point I will again blast it with a bit of Got To Be. At this point I will take some of the hair gel and I will smooth out some of the tips of some areas. So stuff like the hair prongs, I will smooth out the tips of those, the edges of the sideburns, and some of the curls that are on top of the wig. Just sort of smoothing things out, making sure there's not loads of flyaways and things like that. And then I will spray the entire thing again with the Got To Be hairspray, just to make sure everything is locked in place. And then I will try the wig on and cut the lace back. I usually leave just a tiny bit of the lace visible so that I have somewhere clear to glue it down, but you can cut it all the way back if you choose. It's totally up to you. And then you're done. That is your wig fully styled.
So that is my Hawks worklog wig. I will next be, I believe, working on the wings. So the next worklog you see from Hawks is going to be building the base structure for the animatronic wings. I am putting it in this video so I do not chicken out. The wings are going to hopefully be moving. They are going to be expanding and contracting wings, and I'm going to be working a little bit with electronics. It's very easy, don't get me wrong, it's not really difficult, but it's a little bit more difficult than some of the tutorials I've done before, so please do not feel like to cosplay Hawks you have to do that part of the video. You can just totally skip that, or you can just do it without the electronics, but bear in mind the next video is going to be a little bit more of a jump in difficulty, so if you are a first time cosplayer and stuff, maybe skip that one. So yeah, there will be more worklogs coming on. They are slowly speeding up a little bit and getting more into my process, because obviously with not having the materials here I can't work on worklogs, but I am slowly gathering the materials to be able to finish the base frame for Hawks' wings, and then you can actually have more content. But yeah, I hope you'll like this little wig video. Wigs are not my strong point, but I've been really working to try and make myself a better all-round cosplayer. So thank you very much for watching. As always, please remember to be creepy.